let's just kind of go through the SEC, and these teams are the exact teams in the exact order in which Vegas was predicting these teams to finish in the SEC or best chances to win their conference. Okay, so that's kind of the same teams. They put those odds out to yes make the playoffs or no in that right column not make the playoffs. So you got Georgia at the top, and Georgia is the number one favorite in all of the country at minus 500 to make the playoffs. So if you are not a gambler, let's put it in some simple terms in which you can understand. So you would have to bet $500 to win $100 for Georgia to make the playoffs. So basically, Vegas is saying, the odds are they're making the playoff, right? And for if you wanted to bet and say that Georgia is not going to make the 12-team playoff, and you bet $100, you would get your $100 back and win 360. Okay, so that's what those numbers mean right there. So if they're easy to figure out if you just say, all right, if I, for Texas there, if I would have to bet 230 because that's a negative number. I would have to bet 230 to win $100 for them to make the playoff. So, y'all let me know, Mason. What do you think? What do you think about these? What's the best value on this board here? And I think it's funny that Alabama had a little bit better odds to win the conference, but LSU has got a little bit better odds to make the playoffs. Pretty interesting how that turned out. And I think Tennessee down there at plus 172 to make the playoffs. That's not bad odds there. I'm basically, it looks like Vegas feels like Tennessee is one of those first few teams out, which could possibly mean with an extra win or so, they could be one of those teams that sneaks in that 12-team playoff. So what do you think about this list, and who do you think is more likely to squander their opportunity, and who do you think is more likely to make it? It's obviously going to be more than one on this list, don't you think?
Yeah, if I'm looking at value and I want to make a play against and a play for, like a play for yes and a play for no in this case, or to make the playoffs or not and not make the playoffs, I actually really like the play for Alabama to make the playoffs at plus 124 and for LSU not to make the playoffs at minus 142. Those just given by this graph here are two fringe teams. And I think that you'd end up coming out pretty good, right? Bet $100 and you'd win 124. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. More than double your money on Alabama if they end up making it. I'm feeling better and better about this Alabama team as the spring progresses. They're kind of locking up some recruiting wins. We're hearing some buzz about some of the players that are that we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. But some of the incoming talent, the young freshmen that are looking pretty good in spring ball so far, and I think that people just kind of have written Alabama off and have said Kalen DeBoer is going to have to wait a year to do anything special. While that might be true, this is still one of the best programs in the country, right? I still hold firmly that Kalen DeBoer is one of the best coaches in the country, and it might be a tough year for them. I'm not saying that they'll win the conference or anything like that, but to be top 12 in the country, I think they can do that. And so,
doesn't it feel like their floor is like worst case scenario they finish like ranked 20th or something? Like that seems like the very bottom floor for Alabama. And even with Nick Saban being gone, because Alabama seems like their coaching staff may be better. And I'm not saying obviously head coach excluded there. Nobody's better than Nick Saban, but at that same time, I feel like maybe overall the coaching staff might be a little bit better this year.
Well, I think they definitely upgraded at defensive coordinator. And you could argue offensive coordinator because we know Kalen DeBoer is probably going to be calling the plays for the most part. Even though, he promoted the tight end coach, I think that he's going to have his hand on that. So yeah, I think for those two sides of the ball, we've got, two better coordinators. Playing with the same roster. You got the same clay that you're going to be molding a team out of. And I don't know if it happens in year one. But I think Kalen DeBoer can win a national championship, and I think that he's going to be a perennial playoff contender, or have his team as a perennial playoff contender, and be in it. And I just really don't see there being much of a drop off. This is a team that is just full of 5 stars and 4 stars still. You've got some who are trying to come back into the program that left. I know they lost a few, but it's still Alabama. It's still the brand, and they're going to be just fine. So, not to make this an Alabama segment, but at the same time, I think that that's a pretty good bet. Buy while the stock is down, y'all. Obviously, the stock's down on Alabama. Don't be surprised to see them in playoff football come December and January.
Yeah, I could see it. I could definitely see it. I think if I was gonna, as far as betting goes, like actually trying to take advantage of the numbers, you can't really touch Georgia. You can't really touch Texas.
Mhm.
They've got those two set up to where it's like there's really no sense in betting on those. I mean, I don't see a world in which they don't make the college football playoff unless there was just something crazy happening. And how are you going to bet on like an injury or something, right? So I think Alabama gives you the best value on betting yes to make the college football playoff. And I think Ole Miss would be the team that would give you the best value on voting no to making the college football playoff. Um, and that's not to say that I think Ole Miss is just definitely not going to make the college football playoff. I'm not saying that. There's a Vegas says there's a better chance that they do than they don't with that negative number in the yes column there. So, but my point is, I think that's a pretty good value at plus 100. If you feel like Ole Miss maybe could be one of those first teams out, I could see them finishing 13 or number 13 or 14 and be one of those first teams out. So I think that that's a pretty good possibility if you're looking for some value on this list here of SEC teams.
Hey, so I know you put this list together here. Was Missouri not on the list at all?
Yeah, they were. They
Oh,
were.
okay.
But Missouri was not in the top 6 odds to win the SEC championship.
Okay.
So, and that's where this list originated, and
I
I
got you.
converted it over. So, I can only look, hey, Missouri fans, I'm sorry about that. I probably should have put y'all on there, but you're going to see as we go through these conferences. There's one conference in particular. I would love to see if anybody could bet and could guess it in the comment section which one it is. But there's one that they only bothered to put out like a couple of lines out for teams to even make the college football playoff. Yeah, y'all try to guess which conference that is before we get to it here. I bet you can probably guess it. Let's move on to the Big Ten here, and let's see what Vegas has set for us in the Big Ten. So you've got Ohio State there at the top, minus 400 to make, plus 300 not to make the college football playoff. No way I'm betting Ohio State not to make it. Again, these top 2 teams here, Ohio State and Oregon, I think they're set up to really just honestly deter you from betting on these because, I mean, I think the numbers are exactly right. There's nothing, I don't see anything there that's really worth betting money on, unless you just had some kind of weird feeling that Oregon was not going to make the playoff. But we're going to talk about Oregon here in just a bit. I don't really see how you could bet on them not making a 12-team playoff at this time. One of the most interesting lines that I came across in this whole thing was Michigan. The way that they've got even numbers on yes and no. This is a pick'em, guys. Vegas has put a pick'em out there for you in a preseason betting format, and I mean, I think that there's a pretty good chance that Michigan doesn't make the playoff this year. I mean, let's just read the tea leaves. I mean, there's been a mass exodus of not only talent but coaches. And I mean, I, I don't know. If you're giving me a 50-50 shot, I'm saying no, and I'm feeling like I'm probably got at least a 55% chance of hitting that. I feel
Mhm.
like. So I feel like there's value there. What do you think about this list? I think there might be some value in Penn State as well, maybe. If you wanted to bet on them to make the college football playoff, we're going to talk about Penn State here in a bit too. Mason, what's your interpretation of this list? Kind of funny to see Southern Cal down there, by, just ahead of Iowa, huh?
That's right. And, just to kind of give y'all an idea of how I think about this. So if you're making this bet today, right, it's April right now, you're not going to see your money for 8 months,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much, right? 7 or 8 months, depending on when you lay the bet. There is no way in hell I'm giving up $400 to potentially, see an extra $100 in 8 months. That's not smart. Like, you would be better off investing that money in the stock market and you would make more money, right? That's what Vegas is going to do. They're going to hold your $400, invest it. They're going to make plenty of money off of it, and then hope that you also lose so they can continue to make money off of it. But even if they have to pay you back, they made money, right? And that's kind of the idea here behind these odds.
Yeah.
So for me, anything over like $300, I wouldn't take that bet because you're just not going to see your return very quick. It takes too long to get your return on your investment. So I'm really looking at those like Oregon, Michigan, and Penn State. Like, those are the only ones I'm really thinking about, because I mean, if I felt good about USC making the playoffs or Iowa making the playoffs, then yeah, that'd be a smart bet. But I don't. I don't think that's a wise bet. So for me, out of those three, I'm thinking that Penn State is a pretty good one, like you mentioned. I look at their schedule, and we're going to get into that here in a moment. I don't see a way that they don't go 10-2, you know, and that puts them at 3 or 4 in the Big Ten more than likely. And I think that the top three teams of the Big Ten should go. So I like that bet. You're not putting up a ton of money, but pretty good return ultimately. $142, get 100 back, and then I'm with you. I think if I'm going to pick a team that isn't going to make it with good value, it's going to be Michigan. Just too much turnover there on the roster and on the coaching
Yeah.
staff. I think that they've got to reestablish an identity for the most part, because Harbaugh was the identity of this team, and
Yeah.
his you're seeing it now. I saw a clip on the San Diego Chargers the other day randomly, and you see it was one of the coaches, I think it was the strength and conditioning coach, who was talking about all the attention to detail, that they, when they're in the weight room, they have to put the 2.5 pound weights a certain way, on there, so that if you pull one off, the other one looks the exact same. And so they're teaching these professional athletes, and forcing them to have discipline in everything that they do. So that's the type of stuff that Jim Harbaugh instilled in the program. And I think Sharon Moore probably wants to continue, but there's also going to be some changes. He has to have his own attitude and identity, and how that shifts the program, we don't know. But I think that I'm not saying that it's a guarantee that they don't make it, but I think that that would be a pretty wise bet, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think betting on them not to make it would probably be my favorite bet on this on the Big Ten playoff odds that we have here. Let's move on over to the Big 12. As you can see, there's only three lonely teams there, and all of these teams, Vegas is saying are not favored to make the college football playoff necessarily. So plus 310. Look, if you feel good about any of these teams making the college football playoff, then bet on it, right? So somebody's got to make it, right? Somebody here is going to win the
Mhm.
Big 12, and they're going to make it. So I think there's value here. And I think this creates a lot of interest in the Big 12, honestly, because I think a lot of people will bet on these numbers. But I think Utah's a good bet. Uh, Utah, look, it's springtime. Everybody's super positive. Everybody feels like they can win a conference championship at this time of the year. But I wouldn't be surprised if Utah didn't get some of their swagger back this year. Getting Cam Rising back, got some players coming back. Always really good along the lines of scrimmage. I think they're gonna eat like the big dog out there in the Big 12. I feel like. So I feel like Utah would be a pretty good bet. What do you think about these here? Arizona returned a lot of talent, although they have a new coach. So I'm kind of, I'm kind of questioning them. Now they're not some kind of. They've never even been in a 14 playoff discussion. So this is a team that's never even made a playoff. I don't know. I don't know that it's wise to bet on that, but boy, they sure had a good team and had a lot of momentum last year, and a lot of that talent comes back. And oh, by the way, have a Heisman caliber quarterback. And if you don't believe me, look at the Vegas Heisman odds and Noah Fafita. So, what are your thoughts on these three teams? I know you like Kansas State as well.
Yeah, you're splitting hairs between Utah and Kansas State. I think that's a really good number to make the playoffs. And for the value, I mean, yeah, I'm kind of with you. Kansas State would be a good bet to me. If you went with either of those teams, I think you're okay. So, maybe you put a little bit of money on each of them and, hope that it pans out. I'm trying to do the math here. I'm not really sure that if you put even money on each of them, if that would work, but um, yeah, it doesn't work when you do it.
It doesn't work.
Yeah. Anyway, so the interesting one here to me is Arizona. And look, I'm telling y'all, Arizona is a phony of a team, right? Going into the season, they're supposed to be some top 25 team. They're not, you know. I think that Jed Fish is a top 25 coach, and that's what you saw last year when you put on the film and look at Arizona, you saw him scheming up some damn good plays, and so from everything I've heard, there were a lot of NFL coaches who were watching what Jed Fish was doing and implementing that into their playbook because it was brilliant. It was just some really innovative type of. And I'm not an X's and O's guys. I'm kind of taking this at face value from where I heard it from my source, and so. But by all accounts, he was the team. So I think Washington got a really good head coach, and Arizona is. I'm heavily fading Arizona. Not saying Noah Fafita's not a great player. Not saying McMillan's not a great player, but I don't think that those two alone are going to keep Arizona relevant like they were last year.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Jed Fish is about to probably have a little bit of a tough season this year.
Not to mention at what was it, San Jose State that their head coach came from? He won like 40% of his games last year, and had a losing season the year before that. The COVID year was, I think, the last year that he did good, and won like 10 games or something like that. But he did that in a COVID year, where everything gets an asterisk put by it. So I don't know. I think he kind of hit the head coaching job lottery there, and got a $13 million contract out of it, and I don't know that it was deserved.
Well, if you're a Big 12 fan and there's a team on here that you feel like has a chance to make the playoff, I cannot call Vegas and make that happen for you, but you can comment in the comment section and cry about it if you'd like. I will give you a shoulder to cry upon. I hate that for Arizona fans, Mason. I really do. Honestly, I mean, it does. It makes me feel bad because Arizona fans were so excited, man. And we do have some Arizona fans that are subscribed to this channel. Shouts out to you, Wildcat fans. But I hate that for the fans because I know that they were really fired up on Jed Fish and the prospect of this Wildcats team going forward. And let's finish up with number 4 of our Power 4 conferences. We've got the ACC, and we got the 2024 playoff odds for the ACC teams. Clemson and Florida State are atop pretty much every list that you're going to look at that regards anything to do with the ACC and playoff or conference championship odds. I'll go ahead and say it. If I got one team that you know what? Actually, I think I just found maybe my favorite bet. I really like Miami,
Mm.
Mason, to make the 12-team college football playoff. I think it's so possible. Um, but here's what the college football playoff committee doesn't respect this conference, though, and that's what gives me a little bit of hesitancy. As we've seen with all the financial stuff that we've seen, all the deals that have been done on television networks and all that, blah blah blah. The ACC is valued around about the same as the Big 12. Now, there's a few more teams that Vegas has put out odds for them to make the college football playoffs, so I think that's probably an indicator that there's more of a guarantee that a team from the ACC could actually be a formidable opponent in a national championship race. But I don't know, man. Like, how many teams do you think are going to get in from the ACC? Because they're not going to have as many as the SEC or Big Ten, and I feel like your like fourth place SEC or Big Ten team is going to be very comparable to probably like the second best ACC team. you know. So, and I know the college football playoff committee feels the same way, considering Florida State went all the way undefeated until they got the absolute break speed off of them by my glorious Georgia Bulldogs at the end of the year. And college football playoff committee said, "Nah, you're not good enough."
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on this list? Where do you see some value? Um, how many of these ACC teams do you think actually have a chance to get in?
I think that you could see two of these teams. I don't think it would stretch higher than two, more than likely. But to me, I really like Louisville in this position.
Mm.
At plus 360, they hit the transfer portal like nobody's business. They've got some pretty good talent coming in. They've got Tyler Shook at quarterback coming in, and I just think for the value here, right? Um, put $10 on them. Triple your money, more than triple your money by putting $10 on them. I don't think that would be a bad play. I'm not telling you to go bet the house or anything like that, but
Sell your house and bet your mortgage.
yeah, yeah, go ahead and do that.
Yeah, we're not
No,
sponsored by anybody. We're not telling you to do that, but you
yeah.
could.
But so I mean, I think that Louisville's makes sense. Um, if you're telling me a team that doesn't make the playoffs, you could get some money on. I would probably have to go with Florida State. I think that not having a quarterback, really, I mean, DJU coming in new, we kind of know what we're going to get out of him, but he's not a Heisman contender like we thought he was initially. Not to mention, you're not getting the DJU that you saw at Oregon State. You're getting 265-pound DJU. He's put on a couple pounds since he left
Oh
Oregon
no,
State.
has he? Oh
He's been
man.
he's been on the crab leg diet down there at Florida State, and so he's
Uh,
we're getting
we
all
got we got not DJU, we have DJ Huge.
yeah, yeah. We've got
Wow.
DJW. So
DJ Huge in the
yeah.
house.
So maybe that means he's running over some ACC defenders, but um
Very slowly.
I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna get out of him. So, and then not to mention the wide receiver talent that left. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they can't make the playoffs, but for betting purposes here, I think that'd be a pretty good bet with positive money.
Yeah. And we kid about DJU. I think he's a super nice guy, but I think it's hilarious when he takes off running. I have this reoccurring dream, right? That it's me trying to sprint in an undisclosed location, but I have a parachute attached to me and I can't sprint. And I'm literally like leaning all the way forward, almost like touching the ground in front, trying to pull this parachute. And that's what I feel like DJU looks like when he runs. Like he has a
Yeah.
massive parachute behind him. And it's like, how is he possibly moving that slow? It kind of looks like when you go back and watch like film from like the 40s or something football, and they're just like
Hmm.
like barely moved, and that's what I feel like DJU does whenever lumbers around the field. Look, he had a decent year last year. It was not a bad year. He leaves, a place like Corvallis and comes to a much, better weather climate. I would say in Tallahassee, and will probably have a lot better weapons around him. So, I'm not saying that he cannot be successful in that offense. I think he definitely can, but um, you know, just not my favorite quarterback in the world. And but Florida State, maybe they'll have a steady guy. Well, they've got a guy that's got a lot of experience anyway, right?
Well,
So
then on the defensive side of the ball, look at who they were against Georgia, right, and how they matched up. That's the team that is coming back this coming year, right? That the only players who weren't playing for the most part, other than Rodemaker who transferred out, were players who are going to the NFL or leaving
yeah,
the program in some capacity. So that's the team that you're left with is the one that got drugged by Georgia. On top of that, obviously they had a recruiting class and they got like seemingly 10 players from Alabama, but still, I don't think that those. I think it was literally like 8 players that they got out of the transfer portal, and a ton of freshmen. That's not going to make a difference, right? That doesn't make you a playoff team, even in a 12-team playoff. So, I'm sliding on Florida State here a little bit, but maybe they'll upset me. Maybe I'll change my mind before the end of the season or before the end of the preseason. I'm well within my right to do that. But today, I'm going to trash Florida State just a little bit.
how dare you, sir?